Okay, here's my horse character. You can see it's doing its walk cycle animation. If I just hide the geometry and bring back the rig, you can see there the skeleton and the four legs of the horse are set up with an IK setup. The rest of the body, such as the tail, the reins and all the head, is controlled through FK, and I've used these circles here as my controllers. You can see this one here to control the tail has a FK setup to control the rotation and twisting in that tail. The reins on the horse are set up with a spline IK. You can see the cluster handles here allow you to give movement to those reins. Okay, so here's my car character, and you'll notice that along with the NURBS controllers that control this rig, there's also this NURBS menu. This allows you to get to other parts of the rig, such as the facial controls, as well as this level of detail controller that I've put in. If we go right down to low, you can see we go to a low polygon version for animation, and if we go up from medium to high, you can see that our model will smooth out for a rendering quality. So if we hide the geometry of this car, and I'll just hide that facial menu, you can see the skeleton that makes up the car. All the mechanical components of the car, such as the doors and boot, etc., are animated through this skeleton, but the actual deformation of the car's body is controlled through a lattice deformer. So you can see there is a lattice cage that it covers the entire body of the car, and as we move the controllers of the rig, we're actually moving cluster handles on that lattice to deform that car body. So the advantage of this is that it allows you to put the car in a deformed position and then still have the mechanical elements, such as the door and boots, still open and close in that deformed position. So looking just at the wheels and chassis of the car, you can see the same lattice deforming technique was used to deform the wheels. You can see I've got a NURBS circle controlling the squash and stretch of that reel, and you can see the lattice deforming as we move that one up and down. And then I've got a secondary controller here to control the actual position and movement of that wheel, and you can see that wheel is attached via a squash and stretch skeleton to allow you to pull that wheel right out, and the axle will still be attached. And lastly, if we just look at the front of this car's engine, you'll notice that in the facial control there's also an engine speed slider that allows you to get to the procedural animation of the engine's propeller rotating and the engine vibrating itself, which you can see go all the way through to the exhaust. Alright, so here's my tank rig. The controllers are pretty simple for the majority of control. If we just hide the body and look at just the track, you can see the way I've done the track was to create each individual piece of the vehicle's track and attach that to a NURBS circle, and the result was something like this. The way I attached the pieces of track to the curve was to use a motion path, and there's actually a separate motion path for each individual piece of track, so there's about 90 pieces of track there. Once the track was attached to the curve was then placed into a lattice deformer, as you can see here, and that allowed me to get the track to be in the desired shape. The advantage of doing this was that it allowed me to have that NURBS circle rotate within the lattice and therefore give a realistic tank track animation. There's also, if I turn on locators, you can see there's these little locator handles which allow you to put in the suspension on that track, and that's done with just moving more clusters on that lattice. And the idea here was that you could geometry constrain each one of these locators to the ground plane, and then the tank tracks would look realistic as the suspension goes up and down and the tank tracks revolve as the track moves along.